Yeah, yeah. For what is the flesh? Without the spirit, there's no best. Yeah, yeah. We live in the West, where the sins equal death. See, my earthly body doesn't mean nothing. I'll die for it if it means something. In this world, it's just long suffering. He sent his son because he loved me. I'm serious. People out.
Hey, what's going on, family? So today I wanted to get into just more detail of the architecture of the cosmos, and most notably, I guess, regarding that, what is going on with the luminaries above us. So with sun and moon, I came out with a video before on this and just basically went over at least the basic and general concept that we are in a terrarium. Okay, so we are encased. Our world, our three-dimensional organic world, is encased. Above us there's a solid firmament, a solid substance that we consider the sky. And obviously here we have the earth, which we live on. At this point, the majority of our world is water, but it didn't start that way, and we might get into that at some point, but that starts getting into in second Esdras this is brought up. But also underneath the earth, there's eventually more water, and then if you could get that far down, you would hit the underworld, which is also known as Sheol or Hell or Hades. Okay, so it's the basic gist of the worlds here. Okay, so we have the heavens, which is tiered above us. All right, that's usually associated to the hidden realms. Okay, and then you have our world here, the organic world, as I call it, which is a three-dimensional world, and then below us the underworld, which houses the dead. So with that, I'm gonna get into chapter 71 of Enoch, and he's gonna let us know what he found out about the luminaries. Okay, so chapter 71 verse 2, it says, "This is the first law of the luminaries. The sun and the light arrive at the gates of heaven, which are on the east, and on the west of it at the western gates of heaven." Okay, and I have I looked up some GIFs to kind of give a better idea of what it looks like actually. So, and this is kind of small, but I'll show another one that's a little bit larger, but this is basically what's going on. So here you have sun, you have moon. They are rotating over the earth, okay, over us. In this GIF, it looks like sun is a little bit larger than moon, but in actuality they're about the same size. Okay, and this shows the same thing. As you can see, the light stays with sun as he moves around earth. Okay, this is kind of I don't think that they meant this, but it's kind of disrespectful to moon because she gives off her light too. So moon has her own light that she emits. All right, it's actually a cold light that comes off of her, as opposed to sun, he has a warm light, right? So even if sun did not give off his light, there's still this light that would continue with him. Okay, I don't know if you remember that, but in the beginning, the light was made first, and then eventually the luminaries were made. Okay, so back to verse 2. Already we have gates that are coming up. Okay, the sun and the light arrive at the gates of heaven, which are on the east. Okay, and on the west of it at the western gates of heaven. Okay, so there are eastern and western gates. I beheld the gates whence the sun goes forth, and the gates where the sun sets. Okay, so the sun rises in the east, he sets in the west, When these things happen, when he rises and when he sets, he's going through these gates or portals or whatever you want to call them. In this case, they're translated as gates, okay? In which gates also the moon rises and sets. And I beheld the conductors of the stars among those who precede them. 6 gates were at the rising and 6 at the setting of the sun. Okay? So here is telling you with sunrises and sunsets, with moon rising and moon sets, that altitude is a factor at play as well. So it's not just that they're going, on a circuit around the earth, but there's when they're coming out of the eastern gates, okay, and I have a picture here. Okay, so this is basically the eastern gates, and then this represents the western gates, okay? So when they come out of the eastern gates, they rise up higher over the earth, okay? And as they make their circuit, when they come into the western gates, okay, where they set, they lower, okay? And then they lower in altitude, all right? So yes, they're going in a circle on their circuit, and then they're also coming up higher over the earth, and then as they set, they get lower. We'll get into the direction of the circuitry as well. Okay, so verse 5, all these respectively, one after another, are on a level. Okay, so this is where he's talking about the altitude. And numerous windows are on the right and on the left sides of those gates. Okay, so not only are the gates, and these gates are in the sky, okay? As far as I can tell, I don't believe that our human eyes can see the gates, okay? I'm not sure, because there's just a lot that that they don't tell us, especially with the heliocentric deception going. But from what I've seen, it doesn't appear that we can actually see the gates in the sky. And so I don't believe we can see the windows either, okay? But going back to the image, so around these gates are apparently windows, okay? Verse 6, first proceeds forth that great luminary, which is called the sun, the orb of which is as the orb of heaven, the whole of it being replete with splendid and flaming fire. Okay, so this is important too. The whole of him, or it, okay, the whole of the sun, he's being replete with splendid and flaming fire. So let's take a look at this word replete. All right, so from the dictionary, filled or well supplied with something, okay? He's being replenished, all right? So it says first proceeds forth that great luminary, which is called the sun. So when he proceeds forth, he's coming out of the eastern gates. So that's telling you every time sun comes through these eastern gates, he's being his fire and his heat is being replenished. Okay, so these gates recharge him every time he comes out. Every time he rises up, he's being recharged. Okay, so his heat is recharged so that he has the warmth to come through. And I'm not sure, we'll have to keep reading in regards to the western gates, but for sure the eastern gates, okay? And it sounds like this may happen with moon as well. Okay, so we'll have to keep reading. Okay, so verse 6 told us that as sun goes through the eastern gates, as he proceeds forth, right, that he's replenished with splendid and flaming fire. Its chariot, where it ascends, the wind blows. Okay, so the wind helps him as he rises. Okay, and he has his chariot. All right, so what this really means that sun just has a vehicle. He has a vehicle that assists him And as he's in his vehicle, okay, the wind blows him up into the atmosphere higher. So he gets blown into a higher altitude. The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. All right, so verse 8 confounded me for a long time. All right, I mean, I guess I really had to meditate on a lot of these things for a long time. I really appreciated the God Culture's videos on this. They broke this down, I thought, and did a really good job of explaining this. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my image. All right, okay, so now we're starting with the sun setting, right? He sets in the west, proceeds to the north. Okay, this is the north, to get back to the eastern gates. And of course, moon is taking the same circuit. Okay, so she's going clockwise, and she's going through the same gates. All right, she's rising up over the earth as she comes out of the eastern gates. She's lowering into the western gates. Okay, and then she also proceeds through the north to get back to the east. Okay, so reading verse 8 again. The sun sets in heaven, and returning by the north to proceed towards the east is conducted so as to enter by that gate and illuminate the face of heaven. In the same manner it goes forth in the first month by the great gate. Okay, so in the first month it goes through a great gate. Okay, verse 10, it goes forth through the fourth of those 6 gates, which are at the rising of the sun. Okay, so the great gate in the first month must be the 4th gate. Okay, so if we go back to our image, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so assuming we count from inward going out, all right, or if you count from outward going in, you'll get to this gate. But I'm counting from in going out, so I'm looking at this gate being the 4th gate. So this is the gate that sun is coming out of when he rises in the first month. So all that to say, I don't know if sun is using this gate in the first month of the Hebrew calendar or the most likely the Enochian calendar. Okay, verse 11. And in the 4th gate through which the sun with the moon proceeds. Okay, in the 4th gate, and again they're proceeding. All right, so that means that we're looking at the eastern gates. In the first part of it, there are 12 open windows from which issues out a flame when they are open in their proper periods. Okay, so this makes sense, as you know, he had mentioned that sun is replenished when he's coming through those gates. Okay, so now we know that it's the windows, okay, that the flames are coming through that are near the gates, in which that's how he's being replenished. So that's the purpose of the windows, it sounds like. Verse 12, when the sun rises in heaven, it goes forth through this 4th gate 30 days, and by the 4th gate in the west of heaven on a level with it descends. Okay, so now we have the amount of time that he's going on his circuit. Okay, so when sun is coming through this 4th gate, he will do so. He'll come out, rise up over the earth, warm the earth, and bring life to the earth, right? Then he sets in the same gate, okay, and he does this for 30 days. And by the 4th gate in the west of heaven on a level with it descends. Okay, so again, on a level. So we don't know what altitude it is. It's probably best we don't know. Somebody would have probably gone up and tried to manipulate the gate or something. But anyway, he's saying that the gate, the 4th gate specifically, is on a certain level. So maybe the gates aren't even in the same like the same altitude. Just very interesting about how complex the actual architecture is. I find it really interesting after hearing all this about the solar system and the heliocentric model. It's really refreshing to me to learn about what the true creation of the Most High is doing and how he purposed everything. You know, all of the architecture, you know, with the luminaries and the stars and everything that we see in this world, it all holds his signature. So every time we look at something or study something from him, you're essentially studying the creator behind it. Okay, so verse 13, during the period, the day is lengthened from the day, and the night curtailed from the night for 30 days. And then the day is longer by 2 parts than the night. Okay, so now, based off of him coming out of this 4th gate for 30 days and going through his circuit, okay, the day will be lengthened and night will be shortened, okay? And then he tells you how long. The day is longer by 2 parts, so it's 2 parts longer in the day than the night. The day is precisely 10 parts and the night is 8. The sun goes forth through this 4th gate and sets in it, and turns to the 5th gate during 30 days, after which it proceeds from and sets in the 5th gate. Okay, so after the 30 days, let's go back to our image. So let's say sun has gone through his 4th gate 30 days, okay? So on the 30th day, he'll set in the 4th gate, and then his chariot will be moved to line up to take him through the 5th gate, and then he'll do that. He'll run his circuit through the 5th gate after that. So again, the sun goes forth through this 4th gate and sets in it, and turns to the 5th gate during 30 days, after which it proceeds from and sets in the 5th gate. Then the day becomes lengthened by a 2nd portion, so that it is 11 parts, while the night becomes shortened and is only 7 parts. Okay, so as he moves through his gates, it changes the lengthening of day and night. Okay, so verse 17, the sun now returns to the east, entering into the 6th gate, and rising and setting in the 6th gate 31 days on account of its signs. Okay, so if we go back to our image, now he's coming out of the 6th gate for 31 days, okay, making his circuit, right, over the earth, okay, over and over and over. Okay, verse 18, at that period, the day is longer than the night, being twice as long as the night, and become 12 parts. But the night is shortened and becomes 6 parts. Then the sun rises up, that the day may be shortened, and the night lengthened. And the sun returns toward the east, entering into the 6th gate, where it rises and sets for 30 days. Interesting. Okay, so it sounds like he stays in that 6th gate twice as long. When that period is completed, the day becomes shortened precisely 1 part, so that it is 11 parts, while the night is 7 parts. So again, looking at the image, all right, sun and moon use these gates. They come out and they rise up over earth, make their circuit, and then lower to come through and set in the western gates. Okay, they do this for a specific amount of time, and once their time is completed or fulfilled from the gate that they were using, they'll move to the next gate. So verse 22, we see, then the sun goes from the west from that 6th gate and proceeds eastwards, rising in the 5th gate for 30 days and setting again westwards in the 5th gate of the west. So every time he goes through a gate, when he goes through the 5th gate, he also sets in the same gate. If he rises in the 5th eastern gate, he will set in the fifth western gate. Okay, so as he's going through these different gates, notice that, you know, they're in various places here. So when he's using these closer gates, he doesn't have to make as large a circuit. That also explains why, you know, night and day are lengthened and shortened. And that also explains our seasons. So when he's in these first three gates coming out of these, that's probably our spring summer area, especially in North America. As he gets out into these further gates, that's probably when we're getting into fall, getting into winter for us. And then he begins to return, and then it gets warmer again. So this also would explain, you know, when people are like up here in Alaska, or I've heard, you know, in these really northern parts of the of Earth, when he's using, you know, especially this first gate, this would explain why it, you know, they don't ever receive any darkness, right? Because his circuit is so small that they never really leave the light. You know, they're just in a place where like he's constantly right next to them, and so the light is never leaves them at that point until he moves out further. And then probably, I'm assuming he's probably in this, like, you know, these outer gates where there's like I don't know, like 3 or 4 months of darkness at a time. Also notice where these gates are. This would also explain why it's so hot in Australia. You know, when he's rising up, and I mean, I don't know if this gate is actually right there over Australia, but I'm just saying that most likely one of these gates are probably very close to where Australia is. So when he comes out of that gate, you know, he's blazing. That's probably why it's so hot there. So something else I wanted to mention is that in 536 AD, there's an interesting event that occurred that was recorded where sun and moon both, something happened to them and they did not give off their regular light. So I'm gonna read this, and I'll add these links into the description. So here, this is Michael the Syrian. These are historians basically. So he says, in the year 848 of the Syrian era, which is about 537 AD, an event occurred that is beyond belief. Had I not known about it from many different writings, I myself would not have included it. The sun was eclipsed for 18 months. Crazy. That's a crazy statement. So then he says, for 3 hours in the morning it would give light, but a light that resembled neither day nor night. During that year, fruit did not reach the point of maturity. That makes sense, because with sun's heat, he brings life to the earth. So if his heat is limited, then the growth of the earth will be limited, right? At least in those regions, wherever he's coming out of those gates. And that's what appears to be happening, but we'll continue and then we'll take a look at the map again, at the image. For 3 hours in the morning it would give light, but a light that resembled neither day nor night. During that year, fruit did not reach the point of maturity, and all the land became as though transformed into something half alive, or like someone suffering from a long illness. An unprecedented plague ensued, which began in Constantinople. So I believe that's Europe. So Constantinople would be Turkey, Istanbul today. And let's get a better, here we go. Alright, so it depends, I guess, on how you define it, but the water here is, I believe believe associated to the boundary between Shem's territory and Japheth's territory. Okay, but anyway, it's right here next to, like in between Istanbul, next to Greece, and a region of Asia Minor. Okay, an unprecedented plague ensued, which began in Constantinople, where the first day 5,000 people died, the next day 10,000, the third 15,000, the fourth 18,000. Figures reported by the auditors that the emperor had placed at the gates of the city, they counted up to 300,000 people dead and then left off counting. The epidemic first attacked the poor class of the population, then the merchants, and the nobility, including the imperial palace. The trouble began with a wound that formed in the palm of the hand and progressed until the afflicted one could not take a step. Oof. The legs swelled, then the buboes burst, and pus came out. The city began to stink from the unburied corpses. Oh man. And so the bodies were thrown into the sea, but the bodies kept resurfacing. Good grief. The emperor ordered that 40 dahagans be paid to people who would carry a corpse out of town, so that's some form of currency. But often the bearers themselves fell dead in the street. Furthermore, it even happened that someone would enter a deserted house and gather up his treasures to steal, but would end up dying at the door on the way out. Okay, so I don't know what disease that is, but I would say it's hard not to see this as some sort of curse. Okay, so let's go to Procopius. All right. Okay, so here it says, during this winter, Belisarius remained in Syracuse and Solomon in Carthage. And it came about during this year that a most dread portent took place. For the sun gave forth its light without brightness, like the moon, during this whole year. Okay, so again, a very long amount of time. Who is this? So Michael Assyrian, he was saying he recorded it for a year and a half. Here they're saying a whole year. It affected both sun and moon, and it seemed exceedingly like the sun in eclipse. Okay, this is exactly what the Syrian said. For the beams it shed were not clear, nor such as it is accustomed to shed. And from the time when this thing happened, men were free neither from war, nor pestilence, nor any other thing leading to death. And it was the time when Justinian was in the 10th year of his reign, okay, so about 536 to 537 AD. At the opening of spring, when the Christians were celebrating the feast, which they call Easter, there arose a mutiny among the soldiers in Libya. I shall now tell how it arose and to what end it came. Okay, so with the signs of the luminaries, okay, with the dimming of sun and moon, it was chaos on the earth. I thought that this was really interesting because these are also signs that we'll see at the end of time. Think about when the prophets are telling you that, sun will be turned dark, right? And moon will not give her light. Now, a lot of times people are assuming that these things are an eclipse, but it just seems like when they're coming out of, for this, let's just talk about these situations that are recorded here during 536 and 537 AD, okay, that when sun and moon were coming out of their gates, for whatever reason, it doesn't sound like they were replenished. Or maybe only 6 of the windows were replenishing them with fire instead of all 12. So if that was going to happen, if they came out and didn't get replenished with their heat, then that would also explain why, as they ran their circuit, right, even though they didn't get replenished, they still ran their circuit as they're supposed to, and just did not give off their regular light that we're used to or accustomed to. So I thought that was interesting. It made me think about it as I was trying to wrap my head around what's going on with these luminaries. Okay, so again, I'm just going to read a portion of this. So it says, during 536, the world was beset by a long winter, dubbed the Year of Darkness in the New Sciences. Temperatures plummeted and the sun was dimmed by a vast fog which blocked its rays from hitting the earth during 24 hours a day over the course of 18 months. This climate cataclysm affected Europe, the Middle East, and even parts of Asia over the course of the following decade. Okay, so I thought that this was helpful too, because now they gave regions. So it affected Europe, the Middle East, and parts of Asia. So if we go back to our map, again, this would make sense that it would affect Europe, the Middle East, and some of Asia. Okay, especially if it only affected, these the closer gates that he's coming out of, right? So if it just affected gates 1 and 2, where for whatever reason those windows, all 12 of the windows for those 2 gates, okay, they were not being open to fully recharge sun. So when he came out, he affected the earth according to the heat that he was given, right? So because of that, famine hit, and it sounds like wars were going on, and all these things, all these signatures are associated to what will happen in the end of time as well. Okay, so very, very interesting, I thought. So it continues, in fact, this climatic downturn may well have profoundly altered the course of history. But what caused this global climate cataclysm? This is exactly what I'm thinking too. So considering what we know about how sun and moon move and operate, okay, the operation of the luminaries, this seems very intentional. Okay, why didn't it hit the whole earth, right? It just hit specific regions. So potentially it could have hit North America too, but unfortunately we don't have a lot of surviving written artifacts from the natives, because when the Gentiles came and destroyed them, a lot of that was destroyed as well. But potentially, maybe some of the native tribes have written something about this too. Okay, so here's a little bit more information on this. It says, back in 2018, science reported that the medieval historian Michael McCormick had stated that 536, quote, was the beginning of one of the worst periods to be alive, if not the worst year. Okay, so just before I continue, notice again that it's just interesting to me that because it hit Europe, right? It's one of the worst periods to be alive for anyone. It's the worst year that's ever happened. It was not considered a curse. Like, nobody has said this regarding at least those who recorded it. So I just thought that was interesting. In his historical work, Historia Ecclesiastica, translating as Church Histories, the 6th century historian and church leader John of Ephesus wrote that the sun became dark and its darkness lasted for 18 months. Between the years 535 and 536, a series of major climatic events took place that could easily be described as a global cataclysm with catastrophic consequences. Each day, sun shone for about 4 hours, and still this light was only a feeble shadow. Everyone declared that the sun would never recover its full light again, detailed Ephesus. This is incredible. Like, I don't even know what people would say today. But I mean, at some point, this is going to happen again, right? Maybe even worse. In fact, according to Brandon Spector in Live Science, the fall of the Roman Empire may have been a partial result of the decade of famine and plague that began in AD 536. So this is another interesting statement, because I have to say this was something that I thought about. But when you look at the Roman history, the early Roman history, regarding the historians, they're saying, according to their recordings, that Rome fell earlier than the 500s. I think it was like 3 or sometime in I guess the 5th century, so like the 400s AD. So I didn't associate it to this. So it's interesting that they made this statement. Continuing, the fall in temperatures was in fact the beginning of the coldest decade to have been experienced during the last 2,000 years. These low temperatures falling as low as 1.5 Celsius in summertime, for example, led to crop failures and famine recorded across the world. Just a few years later, in 541 AD, Justinian's plague killed as many as 100 million people throughout the Mediterranean. A dire time to be alive indeed. So again, this was, it said just a few decades, right? Or a few years later, okay, 100 million people died throughout the Middle East, and that was not considered one of the worst times to be alive. I wonder why. It didn't hit the Gentiles nearly as hard as the Mediterranean. Okay, well, let's keep going. John of Ephesus is not the only writer to mention this climate cataclysm. Okay, so we already talked about Procopius. Another reference to the climate cataclysm of 536 comes from the 6th century writer Zacharias of Middlin, who authored a chronicle that contains a section referring to the dark sun between 535 and 536 AD. The sun began to be darkened by day and the moon by night. So again, moon and sun are mentioned. While the ocean was tumultuous with spray from the 24th of March in this year to the 24th of June in the following year. So again, with the darkening of sun and moon, the ocean became tumultuous. This is huge because all these signs are already associated together in Scripture. Okay, so this is Luke 21, verse 25, and there will be signs in the sun, in the moon, and in the stars, and on the earth distress of nations, with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear and the expectation of those things which are coming on the earth, for the powers of the heavens will be shaken. HalleluYAH. Man. So, again, it's just very interesting. All these things are associated together, and we literally already saw them in history together. Okay, so, and notice, here it says this, there will be signs in the sun and the moon. So here, this is Revelation 6, verse 12. Okay, during the sixth seal. When the sixth seal is broken, I looked when he opened the sixth seal, and behold, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became like blood. Okay, so based off of, before I continue, based off of what we've been reading though, this is literal, that the sun became black, because I think that some people are reading these things thinking, oh, this must have been an eclipse. That's not what it's saying. Okay, it's telling you that no, sun is not going to give his light. Moon became like blood. Here the stars of heaven fell to the earth, right? So if we also look at the fourth trumpet, okay, so this is Revelation 8. So where's the fourth trumpet? Okay, verse 12. Then the fourth angel sounded, and a third of the sun was struck, a third of the moon, and a third of the stars, so that a third of them were darkened. A third of the day did not shine, and likewise the night. Okay, so that's in the NKJV. I've mentioned this before. So if you look at it in the KJV, this will make more sense. So again, verse 12, and the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the moon, and the third part of the stars. Okay, so as the third part of them was darkened. So going back, this is targeting specific gates. When these luminaries, when the stars are coming out of these gates, okay, they are being influenced differently. Okay, and it's because of that, it's affecting a certain portion of Earth, mainly the third part. Now, when he says a third part of the Earth, Okay, that's talking about, it's really going back to how the earth was broken up between the sons of Noah. Okay, so Noah had 3 sons, right? Each one of his sons got a 1/3 part of earth, okay, for their children. All right, the third part is directly associating to Japheth, because Japheth had the 3rd lot. So Japheth took the 3rd lot. Okay, he got the 3rd territory, or the 3rd part of the earth. That would be Europe and like northern Asia. Okay, so again, even, you know, the same portion is going to be hit again at the end of time. You should really think about why this area is being targeted. Okay, we know that this is the territory of the Gentiles. The Gentiles, scripturally speaking, historically speaking, have terrorized Israelites throughout time, throughout the history of mankind. It's not coincidence. Okay? Okay, so continuing on, the sun began to be darkened by day and the moon by night, while the ocean was tumultuous with spray from the 24th of March in this year to the 24th of June in the following year. And as the winter was a severe one, so much so that from the large and unwanted quantity of snow the birds perished, there was distress among men from the evil things. So even back then, there was distress. We just read that in Luke, right? Okay, so that's from Zacharias of Middlin. Okay. These 3 extracts are just a representative sample of numerous accounts from all over the world, written during the era in question. In all cases, the sun was described as getting dimmer and losing its light, losing his light. Many also described it as having a bluish color. The effects were also observed with the moon. It simply wasn't as bright anymore. The reduction of the light resulted in the reduction of heat on the planet. A lack of rain and a very long winter resulted in crop failures and for birds and other wildfire to perish, as Zacharias of Middlin writes. Famine and plague struck many areas and there were a huge number of deaths. In China and Japan, the event was also recorded in great detail. With scarce water, there were massive droughts and death followed. Hundreds of thousands of square miles became infertile. I hope that makes sense, how these things are associated to the true understanding of the cosmos. This is why, you know, it's written, all scripture is inspiration from Yah. Okay? All these things matter. The fact that there's deceptions, that there's counterfeits, tells you that the truth must matter. Okay, I hope that was helpful in, you know, understanding a little bit more regarding the Luminaries family. All praises to the Most High Yah and the Lion of Yehuda. Peace and love, family.